much better. I just want to be clear. Like there
It
was a
is. No, this is not a criticism. I missed it. I realized like this is true to your brand is we had this opportunity to meet to talk a little bit and brainstorm about the concept, and then I see an invite, and now here we are. And I've been writing down random thoughts in like a notebook, but they're probably not going to help at all. So I'm uh, I'm prepared or not.
Okay, so tell me, remember the first conference you went to? Was it a good conference and was it a good experience?
Uh, do I get to count corporate onboarding where I had to fly across the country and
Count
learn?
anything. Yeah.
Well, we can count that, yeah. It was an interesting experience. I was flying to Florida, and so it was my first kind of big person job. And after working in retail and graduating from school, and I get the job, I'm excited. I spent a couple weeks there, and then they sent me to this onboarding at this big corporate office, and we get there and we go through what seems to most people like a normal day, and then I find out that we have roommates. Yeah.
No.
So,
No.
right. Yeah. I was like, well, here I am in my paid job and I have a roommate. So that was interesting, to say the least. I went with the flow, whatever. And I've got three brothers and have, camp and, now I just was leveraging all those life experiences to. Oh, in college, of course, I was fortunate enough to have a traditional dorm experience with a roommate. So it was very much that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, the listeners that are enthusiastic about going to their first conference, they might have to pitch it. What advice would you give to somebody who's pitching a conference to their leader?
Yeah, I love that because I think people have this perspective that conferences are this place where this magical experience where you go and party, and they can be that, of course. But that's not what you should use to sell to your boss, why that's helpful. So I would connect the dots back to something useful for the organization. And so let's say the organization has a need to understand how to leverage, we'll go with agentic AI, right? And you're really excited about that. And all the think tanks and all the companies are talking about AI right now. But my recommendation would be to distill that down to a relevant business case and really think about a business case. You can go out there on all the internets of things and look at how to make a business case, but connect the dots back to part of the strategy or the need of the organization and how you're going to that conference and your learning and knowledge kind of gains and even connections to vendors, which are really important, will help the company achieve their strategic objectives. I know that sounds very corporate, but like that is, I think, at the very basic level, what I would expect someone on our team who wanted to, conferences are not cheap and they are worth the money, but they have to be in service to the organization. There's also a development oriented part of that as well. And so you might choose to say, well, I'm looking to grow in project management. So I'm going to go to a project management type thing. And it's maybe more about where your next move might be, but there's still going to be, I would argue, relevant skills that you're going to pick up there that's going to help you in your role now.
To get your boss to say yes
Yep.
is 20 minutes before your flight. What are you going to pack?
I remember going to one with other green people like myself and looking at this person who had decided to pack like two massive suitcases. And I felt so bad for her. And like people were kind of making like jokes. Yeah. And she probably never did that ever again. But my recommendation would be, think about the fact that you're probably going to show up around other professionals with your suitcase. So I think a full-size suitcase is fine, by the way. I've actually grown to prefer that over the true professional Tansley being able to put 3 weeks worth of stuff in a carry-on like that's there's a lot of YouTube out there to help you roll your clothes and get into that. That's a little stressful for me. So I prefer the check bag situation, and I would just say it's better to be dressed nicer than more casual because it's surprising. Like in Colorado, we're pretty casual, and I went to GAC last year, and I would say GAC is a more professionally dressed conference. It is in Washington, D.C. DC is a more kind of formal place. And so my recommendation would be to err on the side of more professional attire. What do you think about
Well,
that?
I differ from you greatly on the suitcase situation. My perspective is having traveled for 6 years, 90% of the time, you never give your suitcase to the airlines because the worst thing is that you get someplace and you don't have your running shoes and you don't have the shoes you're going to wear. You don't have anything. And then you've got to
Fair.
go shopping. Having said that, I do think comfortable shoes matter. I am a person who loves shoes, so the shoes are a big deal. And I think you're right. I think I would always err for dressing more formally than less. What's interesting to me is that there's a lot of language as you attend conferences about all kinds of definitions of casual or business. And I think it's all very confusing. And I think to your point,
Agreed.
I always feel better if I am the person in the room who's more dressed than more casual.
And your shoe point's a good one. These conferences are you're massively spread out. Like you will, if you track steps, you're gonna have your best couple days ever.
Yes.
And you stand a lot. So I highly encourage the networking events. That's one of the biggest advantages is the opportunity to go and meet people that you otherwise may never. And you're going to be standing when you do that. And so being comfortable, you don't want to be sitting there like awkwardly, having to find a seat because your feet are killing you.
You mentioned networking. I think that's so important. How do you balance the networking and the learning, and which is more important?
Oh man, I think it would just depend. I think some conferences do a better job of recruiting and paying up for better presenters. I think GAC does a fantastic job of having a diverse group of presenters to learn from. As an HR person going to a credit union conference, there's been some really cool sessions from an education perspective. Um, but I would argue, so for an industry conference like GAC, I mean, the networking is tremendous. You can learn a lot from those people. And if you invest time in those relationships, that can end up being a mentorship, even just getting advice. They may be working on a project or a similar initiative to what you're working on, and you can learn from them, or it could end up being a future boss. And so I would say the relationship part of the conference has to be a priority.
Relationships are critical. And I will tell you my worst networking story. In my first I3 meeting, I attend, and it's full of the most brilliant humans I've ever met. And I felt so ashamed because I thought I do not belong in this room. And Ryan, I literally walked into a corner.
Oh,
To a corner. And I had two people, luckily, that came over and were very kind and said, you can come chat with us. And they have become lifelong friends, Crystal Long and Tom Booz. Thank you for your kindness.
oh,
And
that's amazing.
how do we avoid that? What are the kinds of things you might do if you don't know anybody there? What are you going to say? How do you approach people?
Yeah, I think having your like questions that aren't about the weather or the travel ready to go. And that might look like different things to different people, but it took me a while to figure this out. But people just love to talk about themselves. Even the most selfless, like caring individuals still enjoy the opportunity to share things about themselves. And so I think the folks that I know who do that best have really good questions that they ask about whatever, if you're walking up to an individual and I don't know, do you see a lot of tags where people's names are, or are we starting right? We're probably starting right from introduction, but you know, what, you know, where are you from? What's it like there? What do you do for fun there? I think those are some kind of basic ones. But if you start to really think about their role, and visualize maybe a similar role at your organization and think about like how that might compare. I, as a kind of former recruiter and sometimes current recruiter and HR person, I love to geek out to how organizations are structured, some of the things that they're kind of focused on from an initiative standpoint. Those are always good topics, but everyone has different personalities. I would just highly recommend, geeking out and having a handful of basic questions and just get out, put yourself out there. It's so uncomfortable. So I do empathize. And I don't know if this is helpful, but I still like have those moments. A lot of people do. I mean, social anxiety is a real thing. And, um, you know, I think that the only way to get through that is just to practice and get yourself out there.
I think it's also okay to say that, I think it's
Yeah.
okay to say, this is my first time here. What's
Yeah.
something you think I should pay attention to?
I love that.
I think that's something, especially people that have been to these events for years and years, would probably feel really good about, to your point, sharing their experience and what they're enthusiastic about.
Yeah, I would say that of all the industries that I've seen in my previous life and again recruiting for a lot of different types of companies and then the tech world, credit union people like really want to help. So if you are vulnerable and do exactly what you just said, like I've seen so many kind of senior level leadership that I might be intimidated by or might otherwise not approach if I worked in a different industry. And you start to have those conversations, and it's can be really rewarding. You're like, oh, you're just people. I know a lot of people say that, but like I think we're special in that we have that kind of collaborative spirit, and it's also why there's other people there in the room because they want to continue to help credit unions get better.
What's something you wish you knew before maybe going to your first GAC?
Um, I would say I mean, I looked at the agenda. I wish I would have spent more time being selective with my time because the time will go by really fast. And so I would highly recommend coming up with a game plan, work with your leader on that if you need help. But the agenda's out there. And so going through and really thinking about how you want to spend every hour of your day. And of course, if that doesn't happen, fine. But what are some of the must-do things that you have on your list? And, whether they're sessions or whether they're people that you want to meet, networking hours, but plan. I wish I would have planned better. And I think that's good advice for anybody going to any type of conference, but GAC especially it's wall to wall. And I think could be easy to go through, have fun, and then miss something. Dang it, I wish I would have gone and done that. So.
What's an unwritten rule or a bit of etiquette that you think people might not know about?
Um, yeah. Oh, I love this one. So, this happened recently, I'll say. We were in a meeting and there were like, we'll say senior level people in it, and everybody was sitting down. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Tansley. Do you stand up to greet or do you remain seated? What's the, what do you do?
Stand up to greet
Stand up
always.
to greet. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
shake hands
we had a
and
whole
hug.
fascinating conversation about that, but
Oh, yeah. I think it matters.
I mean, I think those are kind of unwritten. What about hugs or handshakes, or depends on the person?
I'm a hugger. And I have learned we have some team members at Community Financial who are not huggers. And so if I don't know someone, I will often ask if it's okay. Or I will say something like I'm a hugger. And usually if someone is going to really be challenged by that, they might say so. Again, as you said, credit union people are very, very friendly and
They
kind.
are.
So other industries might be different than credit unions, but I do generally think credit union people are huggers.
Bankers don't hug. You know, they're just handshakers.
I don't think that bankers are hugging. No, I don't think
Maybe
that's,
some, maybe like the small, cool community banks.
there's probably one or two
Yeah,
that are about to come work at a credit union.
exactly. I mean, those are the people who recruit. I think the other unwritten rule is don't get hammered. Uh, and there's lots of opportunity to get hammered. And I have seen bad decisions play out that way. And so don't allow alcohol to negatively impact your brand.
And I
And
have tips about this.
I want
So
to hear them.
one is if you really do want to have an adult beverage, and that's cool, every adult beverage is followed and joined by another beverage that's not adult. For me, that's Diet Coke. Whatever, if it's water, if it's tonic, whatever it is, adult beverage always mirrored by some
The one
other.
to one.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one is if you don't, right? If drinking isn't your thing or you're nervous about drinking, you can fake drink. You
How does
can,
that work?
one of two things. You can order a real drink and hold it. No one's going to notice. Or you can order tonic water
Yeah.
with a lime.
Yeah.
Lots of good choices there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to say that, it is becoming so much more socially acceptable not to drink
True.
or to drink in a beer,
Yeah.
or to walk over to the bartender and ask for a mocktail.
Yes.
I know there's different kind of levels of depending on how comfortable people are, but I've witnessed in the past, even 5 years, the people that I know and just being at some of these events where it isn't as boozy, but there's still those, people that are really can handle it. And I think you have to know yourself in that. But to me, that's something to at least think about and mentally prepare for because there will be alcohol.
Yes.
And you'll get invitations from, different peers or vendors or whatever that looks like. And so just, not to sound like a dad, which I am, but be careful.
Agree. You and I are both extroverts. For the introverts, what happens if you're feeling overwhelmed? You've had too much stimulation. You just can't take another minute. What do you do?
So like GAC is in DC and it's amazing town. So I would take a walk. I also think like you can reach out to people and have a smaller group of buddies or maybe like-minded folks to spend time with there where you're still making the most out of kind of some interactions. But I also know it gets to the point where it's like I need to absolutely check out. And I think that's okay because you have to have the energy to continue. So, I mean, a break would be good.
I also think there's something to leaving people wanting more. It's okay
Yeah,
for people to be curious about why you needed to take a rest.
that's such a good point. When I was newer in my career, I felt obligated when there was a networking event or whatever to be one of the last people there. I like to have fun and talk and obviously extroverted, but also I realized too that it is okay to be kind of on the earlier side. If you're in a room with 150 people, they're not, it's all good. And there's a really good chance that other people are going to see you leave and be like, man, that's a really good idea. And they just didn't have the courage and strength. So I
Yeah.
think it's okay.
Yes. Okay, well, I have at least three more questions. So I
Yeah.
think we should end here, but do part two. How does that seem to you?
Yeah. This is a big event
It's a
that's going to
big
require
event,
a lot of thought. So
right? Okay,
this is
awesome.
fun.
We will do episode two on attending your first conference.
Yes. And I have
Anything you
things
want to
too.
leave people
So
with?
yeah, I think there's a lot of um what I want to leave people with curiosity. So we have more. We have more to share. And I have
We do.
questions for you. So
Oh,
yeah.
great. Can't wait. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll be back, friends. We'll see you soon.